The pressure was intense for Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison in the trial of Derek Chauvin. We'll talk with a Detroit native about the verdict and the road ahead. President Biden lays out a massive plan for American infrastructure, and Congresswoman Debbie Dingell will ride shotgun on selling it in Congress. We'll talk to her. And a look at the massive semiconductor mess in the auto industry. Today is Sunday, May 2nd, 2021, and this is Flashpoint. Hi, welcome to Flashpoint. Good to have you with us as we make our way into the month of May, a month that will tell us a lot about our ability to get past the pandemic. This week, Governor Whitmer basically put matters in your hands. Workplaces, restaurants, entertainment venues, they will now open according to our vaccination rates. Will that accelerate the vaccine rates? We will be watching intently. Week before last, we were watching intently as a Minneapolis jury convicted Derek Chauvin in the murder of George Floyd. At the helm for the prosecution was the Minnesota Attorney General and Detroit native Keith Ellison. His team landed a conviction that is very rare in these cases. He'll be here this morning to talk about what's next. That's also the question we're going to ask of Congresswoman Debbie Dingell. In President Biden's address to Congress Wednesday night, he made his pitch for a set of plans as breathtaking for their price tag as for their scope and scale. Congresswoman Dingell will be here to talk about it. And AutoLine's John McElroy will be here to give us a semiconductor primer, why this shortage is such a roadblock for the entire auto industry. All today on Flashpoint. Well, just after the charges were filed against Derek Chauvin, Minnesota's Attorney General Keith Ellison joined us on this program and cautioned everyone against assuming that the video was enough or that there's anything close to a slam dunk in an assault or murder case against a police officer. Well, the jury didn't actually need that much time to deliver that rare conviction, and Attorney General Ellison is back on his hometown airwaves to talk with us about it today. Attorney General Ellison, it's great to have you back on the program. I want to start, though, with the fact that, and you've made this point in a number of remarks since the verdict was read, you're not really sure about the word justice. Talk about why you don't think really justice wasn't quite possible here, was it?
Well, justice implies restoration, and it implies that we're going to restore and repair harm done. But George Floyd's never coming back to his family. What we can do is hold people accountable who have inflicted tremendous damage on George Floyd's family, and the community at large. And I'm very pleased that we did that. 3 convictions, guilty on all counts. And yet we have much more work to do, even on this case.
In fact, you've still got 3 more officers. I think that's lost perhaps on some people. You've still got cases pending against 3 more officers.
That's right. They are presumed innocent, and I'm not at liberty to talk much about those cases, but they are still there. Our trial date is August 23rd.
I think your grasp of the fact that this was much bigger than a local case has been obvious from the drop of all this. We talked about it when you were on the program months ago. But I think one of the really extraordinary things that you did in your preparations for this case with your prosecutors, you brought in the mother of Eric Garner, the man who was killed in an altercation with police because he was selling loose cigarettes on the streets of New York. Tell me a little bit about where that idea came from and what Eric Garner's mother ended up meaning to the prosecuting team as you were preparing the case.
Well, it's important to keep a strong sense of morale, a strong sense of focus and purpose whenever you're engaged in trying a case like this one. So I would look for people who I thought could help our team, prosecutors, paralegals, investigators, understand just the great importance of this matter. And, Eric Garner's mother was gracious enough to spend a few moments talking about her son, talking about the beauty of the man that he was, talking about his tragic end and her struggle to make sure that this does not happen to other families. We also had other folks, talk to our meetings, but she was very special because George Floyd was literally calling for his mother.
Yeah.
And for a mother of a victim like him to come on, both Eric Garner and George Floyd were saying they couldn't breathe. And so her presence just meant so much. And I can tell you that we had a few misty eyes on the team when she delivered her thoughts and her good wishes for our team and her hope that we would be successful in a way that sadly justice never came, accountability never came for her son.
It was, I thought, an extraordinary gesture. When I had you on the program months ago, you were really trying to caution everyone against thinking that there was anything easy about a case like this. And then the jury came back very, very quickly. So are you just really good at expectation management, or did the case go differently, perhaps, than you thought it might? Was it an easier case to make than you thought it would be?
No, it was not an easier case to make. I just think we had some extraordinary professionals who stepped up and did a great job, starting with jury selection, but even before that. I think, things look easy when you really, really, really work hard, but they really aren't. There was a tremendous amount of effort that went into every aspect of the case, and we expect the same in the next 3 cases as well. So we're already in our preparation stage, and we're gonna work hard because we know that, look, we are all raised, me included, to believe that a police officer is not going to do a bad thing. We all grew up watching Law and Order, CSI. When I was a kid, we watched reruns of Dragnet. And we know that most officers do a great job every day. We also know that any person, including a police officer, can do the wrong thing. And so, but for so much of the community, it's a bigger leap when a police officer is accused. People just don't want to believe it, even if the facts are there. And so we had to overcome that, which, is something that is probably good that we have to overcome that burden. We want everyone presumed innocent, including police officer defendants. But at the same time, we were able to get the jury to see the facts, to believe their eyes. And we're grateful for the outcome.
You have said that we need from here a social transformation, something much bigger than just a few tweaks. And yet I'm really curious about what your thoughts are on some of the reaction that we've heard bubble out, because we had contemporaneous events involving police while this was going on. And we had comments like from Detroit area Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib, who said it's time to get rid of policing and get rid of incarceration. I'm really curious as to how you felt about the reaction and the response that in some cases was too extreme for some.
Well, first thing first, I do support the passage of the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. Yeah. I think this is an important piece of legislation. It will establish a national registry so that we can track and monitor excessive use of force by officers. It will change the burdens on qualified immunity. It will ban the practice of racial profiling. And there are other important pieces of that bill that I would support and urge all Detroiters to support as well. Look, at the end of the day, police officers, most of them join the force so they can help people. That's why they're there. They want to help people. And yet we do know that there are times, just like in every other profession, people go astray. We're going to need to hold folks accountable. And we also have to recognize the systemic nature of this problem. I mean, look, whether it is the Kerner Commission that identified bad policing as a spark for urban unrest, including in Detroit, or whether it's, the more recent reports like the 21st Century Policing Task Force, which came out after the Ferguson troubles. Mm-hmm. The bottom line is this is a systemic and widespread problem, and it requires a systemic, widespread solution. I think the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act is step number one. Well,
lastly, are you optimistic that that moment can happen now, or did you watch the cases happen, as I was just mentioning, the others that happened the very week that this jury's deliberating, and did you think, man, we're not getting anywhere?
Well, I'm an eternal optimist. My mom, who was born in Louisiana but lived her whole adult life in Detroit, Michigan, taught us to, always look for the light. And so I'm just sort of wired that way. I believe we can get there, but it's going to take a lot of work. And quite honestly, there's no city that is immune from this problem. Yeah. Minneapolis, Detroit, but also we see North Carolina, we see Ferguson, all over the country. So let's deal with this problem. And who will benefit? One of the groups that will benefit from the reform that I'm talking about is the officers who swear their oath and put on their badge and try to do the right thing every day. They're not well served by officers like Derek Chauvin. They're poorly served by officers like Derek Chauvin.
Yeah.
We want to be able to create an environment where a good cop can stand proud and feel the respect that people really have, and not be confused with somebody like Derek Chauvin and sadly some others as well.
Attorney General Keith Ellison, you stay very connected to your hometown. You've been very generous with your time with us. It's really great to talk to you again, and hopefully we'll talk to you again soon down the line.
Anytime.
You bet. Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison. We come back. President Biden's plans for the U.S. What we need, or is it too much and too expensive? This is Flashpoint on Local 4.
Recently got vaccinated to protect my family, friends, and myself.
To build up that herd immunity.
I play sports without any interruptions.
I got vaccinated because I wanted to do my part as a citizen of my community.
I got vaccinated. Please get the vaccine facts at clickondetroit.com.
We all got hit hard in 2020. Beaumont's been fighting the pandemic with our community since Michigan's first COVID patients were diagnosed. It takes all of us. We're proud to have cared for the most COVID patients in the state. And now we're leading the fight to end the pandemic with our new vaccination clinics. With every person we vaccinate, our community grows stronger. But we can only do it together. Beat the pandemic with Beaumont.
Hi, I'm David Hall, and now is the time to refinance your home loan. Take years off your loan, lower your payment, consolidate some debt. Hall Financial's ready to help you achieve your goals. Don't miss out on historically low rates. Go to davidhallmortgage.com.
Monday at 5. It was a place to escape, a place to relax and unwind. But something sinister was about to happen to a teenage worker.
Her body was found along this road here in Milford. That was some 40 years ago. Now, could advancements in technology help bring some answers to this cold case?
The defenders take you inside the twisting investigation and reveal a bizarre turn.
Maybe some conflicted love interests.
That's a definite possibility.
Monday on Local 4 News at 5.
I'm Lila Lazarus. Getting your annual physical is important. And nowadays, you'll likely feel safer than ever.
Hi, I'm just going to check your temperature.
They take your temperature. Everyone is wearing masks. There's no chairs or magazines, but there is plenty of sanitizer.
We've taken every precaution to make sure that you can get the care that you need. Everyone is masked. We're all screened based on symptoms. We're also getting a temperature check. Safety is our #1 concern.
Connect with your St. Joe's primary care physician today.
Welcome back. The plans laid out by President Biden Wednesday night are mammoth in scope. They would touch everything from broadband access to child care and a million things in between. Just as mammoth, though, is the price tag. He then pointed to Congresswoman Debbie Dingell to help ferry the plans along through our very divided Congress. And Congresswoman Dingell is with us from Washington today. Congresswoman, before we get to everything that's going on with the Biden plan, let me start, though, with the announcement that came this week from General Motors, which was your life for decades before working there, before you moved into politics, about investing $1 billion into an electric vehicle plant in Mexico. I don't suppose it's easy for you to criticize your old home, but you seemed furious.
Well, the fact of the matter is I was not given a heads up. I've been in constant negotiations, discussions with the UAW and the environmental organizations, the presidents themselves of these LCV, the Sierra Club, the Environmental Defense Fund, and 8 more have been hands-on involved of how do we protect our environment and protect jobs in this country as well. So the timing was not good. The day after President Biden's speech, it did not have context. It still needs context. And we need to make sure that American taxpayer dollars are spent on American jobs, protecting jobs, creating good paying jobs in this country.
The UAW, yes, not about as upset with it as you were. We'll continue to follow both of those sides of the story. Let's move back then to President Biden's plans. This after a campaign that was largely built on talking about trying to bring the country back together and reaching across the aisle. This plan seems designed to not reach across the aisle. Congressman, you're going to, of course, you already know this, but I think the conservatives are already saying this is exactly big government rung amok trying to do everything.
Actually, Devin, I think you'd be surprised at the number of quiet conversations that are going on. I think there is agreement on we need to fix, to quote our governor, our damn roads and our bridges. I think COVID has shined a light on the disparity in broadband access in rural areas, in urban areas, and that Republicans and Democrats alike, Fred Upton is the lead sponsor with Jim Clyburn on the broadband bill. I think there is real agreement that we need to replace pipes that still have lead in the water. I think that many people, Republicans and Democrats, are concerned about the number of women that have had to leave the workforce. People don't look at themselves as to whether the Republican or Democrat if they can't get child care. I met with women last week that are working 2 jobs and still making less than the equivalent of $15 an hour. And daycare for one costs $16, another $19, and many others couldn't find access at all. These are major issues that we've got to deal with. I talk to my Republican colleagues about them every day. Joe Biden is real about wanting to talk to people on both sides of the aisle. And we're now entering into the time that pen goes to paper and we try to find the common ground.
I saw very few, I don't think I saw any Republicans applaud when he mentioned raising the minimum wage. And I think if Republicans could take a line item veto to these plans, they seem to be finding very little that is what they would describe as infrastructure. You're right about roads and bridges. I think a lot of Republicans agree with you there, but you start talking about the broad scope of this and it starts to move into a lot of just the same way that they complained about what happened with the COVID relief, that a lot of it didn't seem to be attached to COVID. Now the complaint is a lot of this doesn't really seem to be attached to infrastructure, not as they see it.
So first of all, I'm going to say it's those same Republicans that didn't support it that are out taking credit for many of the provisions that are in there. And you know what? I don't care right now because I want people to get the relief that they need. The Oxford Dictionary definition of infrastructure is systems or processes that helps a country or an organization operate efficiently. All of the issues that are in these bills matter in this country. Coming out of the Great Depression, we got Social Security. And when you hear what people were saying when it first passed, there were some similar comments. And nobody could imagine this country without Social Security now. We came out of World War II and got the GI Bill, which established veterans' health care, helped educate veterans, helped them buy their first homes or buy homes. We've coming out of the pandemic. This has been turned the world upside down in ways that are maybe worse in some ways than previous experiences. It's the time to look at the fractures in our society and where do we work together, being an important word, to address many of these problems.
One of the fractures comes in how to pay for it then. By the time President Trump left office, the federal debt was around $28 trillion. It had grown by $7 to $8 trillion while he was in office. This doesn't seem any way at all to make that less, these plans, no matter how much you decide to tax the rich. Does anybody worry about the deficit and the debt anymore?
Well, first of all, I do. I think some of the things need to be done. But look, we got 55 corporations that didn't pay taxes at all for the last several years, who are using our tax code to get loopholes that allow them to locate overseas. And we got a lot of people that aren't paying their fair share. It's one of the reasons he's investing, putting more money in the IRS to go after people who aren't paying what their taxes should be. And by the way, when you create jobs, good, solid, middle-class jobs, you have a lot of people that are paying taxes into the system. And we've got other programs that we need to look and eliminate waste and fraud. So I think we have to have real discussions, and I want to talk with my Republican colleagues at the table about how we do address revenue issues, but do it in a fair way.
Debbie Dingle, it's always good to have you back on Flashpoint and hopefully in person again here in the very near future instead of across the digital transom. Thanks so much for the time. Good talking to you again.
Thank you. Good talking to you.
You bet. We come back, we'll talk about the semiconductor crisis in the auto industry. This is Flashpoint on Local 4.
All month long, enjoy extended green tag savings at all Tamaroff and Jeffrey locations.
Food Jared. I am Cassio's, god of cash back.
What are you looking for?
Kanaki.
Gnocchi?
Yes!
I'll find.
Oh! I shall never forget this.
Get 5% cashback rewards. Visit GoCredit1.com.
This is not just a mask. It's a bridge to better days. The path back to togetherness and protection for those we love. So until we all get the COVID-19 vaccine and build community immunity, which will take time, stay careful, mask up, and social distance. Spread hope, not COVID.
All for one elite team making the impossible possible. All for one innovative plan built for one cancer fighter, you. All for one goal, rising above your cancer. At the Henry Ford Cancer Institute, we're in this fight together. And at our global destination, we'll take care to the next level.
For 81 years, we've been here for Michigan. From day one to year 100. Committed to the communities we call home. Because we're here for it all and always will be. Confidence comes with every card. We're here for you. With resources that make connecting with your coverage and getting the care you need easier than ever before. We're here for it all and always will be. Confidence comes with every card.
We are all experiencing history in the making.
National news that hits home.
Derek Chauvin has been found guilty in the murder of George Floyd.
George's legacy will not be just about his death, but about what we must do in his memory.
Local news that affects us all involving the coronavirus. The new mask rules are set to take effect today in Michigan.
These are morning moments that will be remembered and discussed.
Thank you for trusting Local 4 News today to bring them to you.
If we used to refer to a car as a bucket of bolts, we might now refer to it as a cluster of computers. Only these cars can't roll along without semiconductors, and the same might be said of the entire auto industry. Let's talk it over with John McElroy of AutoLine. Good to have you back, John. For those who are just hearing the headlines about plant shutdowns and quotas that can't or won't be met, how would you explain what is happening in the car business right now?
It's complicated, but here's what happened. Last year, when COVID hit and automakers all around the world had to shut down their plants, they canceled their orders for chips. Now, the auto industry, they're like the 800-pound gorilla when it comes to purchasing of steel, of rubber, of glass. When it comes to microprocessors, they're a small player. They account for maybe 10% of chip sales worldwide. So anyway, they canceled their orders. Bad thing to do when it comes to things like chips, because you go to the back of the line. You know, if they had said, hey, look, we're going to reopen our plants in 8 weeks, slot us back in 8 weeks, that would have been fine. But they didn't know when they were going to be able to reopen again. So they went to the back of the line. The consumer electronic industry rushed in to buy up all that capacity. And the other thing you got to keep in mind, it takes 6 months to manufacture a chip from scratch. So not only did they go to the back of the line, now they got to wait 6 months before their batch can start getting processed and get into the system. And so that's where we find ourselves right now. There's a global shortage of chips for the auto industry. Now it's even starting to impact the consumer electronics industry. Apple just came out and said, hey, we're going to run out of chips. Yeah. I think Samsung was another one that just said the same thing. Yeah. It's a big problem.
So this supply chain, we have seen this become a problem in so many industries due to the pandemic. A lot of it pandemic focused and the fault of the pandemic, it seems. But I think what you just described is for the auto industry, a self-inflicted wound in a lot of ways.
Well, I wouldn't necessarily call it self-inflicted. There's a couple of other things that even made this system worse, or the situation worse. There's a company in Japan called Renesas. They had a big fire. They make something like 30% of Ford's chips, for example. They make a lot of automotive chips. Then when Texas a few months ago had that cold snap and their whole electrical grid went down, that shut down 2 or 3 chip plants in Texas. So what this is all uncovered, and really, Devin, it goes beyond just microprocessors. The global supply chain for so many critical materials is extremely efficient, but it's also very fragile. So if you have a fire, if you have a tsunami, if you get a big ship caught in the middle of the Suez Canal, everything grinds to a halt. And so I think we're going to have to see more regional supply chains, not just global ones.
So this ends up creating one more industry that needs to remake itself, given or a part of itself, because of what it has learned about itself through the pandemic, right?
Well, we've learned that, and we've also, the world has learned that we need more chip manufacturing capacity. Yeah. And so much of it is dependent on Taiwan. Well, what if something happens in Taiwan? You know, that's going to bring everything to a screeching halt. And so you're seeing the Biden administration do a 100-day review of critical supply chains. This is one that they're going to address. And we need to reshore. We need a strategy, a policy to reshore critical manufacturing, critical components. It's going to take years to be able to do that.
Yeah. Boy, John, we are overdue for a really big conversation on what's happened to the auto industry over this last year. Well, I hope we'll do that really soon. Great to talk to you. Stay safe, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks, Devin.
You bet. From AutoLine, the one and only John McElroy. Meet the Press coming up next. Hope you have a great week. Thanks so much for being here. We'll see you next time for Flashpoint.